Kia ora everyone, and welcome to CW Live. It's great to be back here online on Facebook Live. Joining me here is from the CW whānau. We have Leafa, Paul, and Lauren. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about spring cleaning. And it's been a little while since we've done one of these CW Live chats. So just a reminder, if you have any questions or thoughts or kōrero that you want to share throughout the chat, just chuck it in the comments and we'll make sure that the team can address that as and when it arrives. So when we're talking about spring cleaning, we're talking about how we can kind of use this time, this kind of unusual time, to do different things to help us within our creative practice, within things that support our creative practice, or with ways that we might communicate with audiences. And so the team are going to talk a little bit about that. So we're going to kick it off with Leafa, who's going to lead us off in a discussion about spring cleaning within our creative practice, and then the team will kind of join in from there. So thanks to everyone here for being here, and let's kick into it.
Tēnā koutou katoa. So spring cleaning, the first thing that comes to mind is what? Yes, we get those things out of boxes and we go through them. And so something that I do that, well, not even consciously, when I'm going to attempt to re-enter my studio or the garden shed or whatever you want to call it, the space where you make, I tend to just go in and sit and look around at everything. And I just sit with the mess. If it is messy, I just sit with it. And then I start to sift through in my mind what it is that I want to do. And you've got to kind of get your mojo, your juices kind of flowing first. So sometimes I find that going through my old, I wouldn't call it rubbish, but my old stuff that brings back memories, that takes you maybe back 5, 10, 15 years, even more. Something about that makes you reminisce. And sometimes in that process, I find that I'm willing to, I can see how maybe crap it is or how good it is. And then I can start sifting and saying, well, I'm ready to let that go. Or maybe like if you're a painter or if you're a person who makes 2D works, attempting new marks by looking at old works and saying, oh, I could have done it this way. So I start sort of peeling back those layers of that approach to creating, just the actual creating practice. But another thing I do is I start divesting myself and getting rid of social media things, not social media so much as Facebook or Instagram, but games that I love, that I really love, and also maybe sometimes screen time, any kind of screen time, like, you know, sacrificing some of those things that I prefer to sit on my bed or on the couch and watch. And so spring cleaning, those kind of actions that lead to no work output, no creative output. And one way that sometimes it inspires me to play those games too. Don't get me wrong, I love them. But at the other end of the spectrum, when I've had no output for a very long time, I find that fear kind of creeps in. So it's like getting the courage to pull out your favorite item of clothing, even if you think you might look naff in it. It's like that. It's like just dig it up and just do it. And so chuck out some of those. You actually don't have, people say, oh, I've got a block. You've got a block because you didn't actually, if you don't dig into the box of things that you want to chuck out, you can't actually sort through what you want. That's just one approach. The other approach is just chuck it all out and start again.
And as we kind of go through these weird times, and I think people have different kind of experiences, and I think that our experiences of it change on a daily basis, perhaps as our kind of sense of self and place kind of shifts within the morphing field of time that is lockdown. It's interesting to kind of think through these things. Paul, how does this kind of relate to your own practice?
Yeah, it is. It is weird times. I mean, we all know that, but it's weird times for being a creative person as well. And it's interesting. Like every time there's a lockdown, I find myself having conversations with friends and other artists who actually find it hard to make their usual work. And I have found that a bit as well. I don't even fully understand why that is, but I remember in 2020 in March or whenever it was, when we first got locked down, there was this sort of almost this excitement amongst the arts community of like, oh, it's going to be like a stay-at-home artist residency. But then for a lot of people, and actually, people I follow on Instagram who are overseas as well, that it wasn't like that. I think there was too many other conflicting things happening. There was a lot of anxiety, and I mean, one of the things that I've found worked really well is actually just taking the pressure off, because I realized that by saying, oh, this is a chance that or a time that I should be using, I should be productive, that's quite a lot of extra pressure to put on in an already kind of strange time. In the lockdown last year, I did something that I never do, I've never really done, which is I just did an online course and then started doing pencil sketches, like trying to get them really accurate, of my friends and family, which is completely unrelated to my normal arts practice. But by doing that, it was actually just a really good opportunity to keep making but not have the pressure, because I think sometimes if we step into it, something that we don't normally do, it feels different. We're not as kind of ego identified with it or whatever it is, and it's kind of like it feels I mean, for me, it felt like it didn't really matter if I made the eyes too big when I was drawing, my friend or whatever. It's like, oh well.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I agree. It's those things don't matter. Like, I'm a performance artist, but I am also a painter, and I have neglected my painting practice for not fully. I'm always painting, but I just never exhibit it. And so I managed to actually dream up a painting. And that's another thing too. When you have those dream opportunities, those opportunities where you can get some rest and you have dreams of work, then that's not a spring clean, but it's a way of getting those ideas out of your head and into real life. It could be anything, music, like you were saying, pencil sketching. It doesn't matter if you're good at it or not good at it. It's creative.
That's awesome. Lauren, how have you kind of worked through sort of creative practice and what that means for someone whose work is very kind of performative and in those kind of open spaces?
I think I've used it as a time to sort of reflect on what my goals are and what my next kind of opportunities could be that I could harness. It's been a great time to incubate ideas and reach out to collaborators and mood board and seek out those inspirations online. And also, I mean, a large part of my practice is music, so going down rabbit holes and different musical journeys through playlists that I usually wouldn't look through to see if I could introduce myself to some new tracks that'll be interesting to create work to. So even though I'm not performing, it's the ideas are still buzzing around, and there's always points to find inspiration.
That's awesome. So when we kind of think more broadly, we've talked a little bit about creative practice and the practice of creating, but the process and kind of reality of being an artist is much broader than that. And so I wonder, Paul, if you wanted to talk a little bit about kind of what are some ways that we could spring clean in other elements of our lives that might support our creative practice.
Yeah, sure. So I think alongside what I was saying just before, that if you are finding it hard to create at the moment, sometimes trying to push through isn't the answer. Sometimes you might just actually need a break from the actual creating. But this could be the perfect opportunity to move forward on all those other things that are either on your to-do list or kind of in the back of your mind of something that you thought would be good to do at some point. Maybe this is the point, that you were waiting for. So at the start of this latest lockdown, or was it the one before? They're all getting a bit blurry now. I'm not sure. Not sure what's what. But recently, when we were locked down, I took the opportunity to completely rebuild my website, which normally is kind of low. I know it's one of those things. I know it's important. Well, actually, it's debatable whether websites are still important or not, but for me, I think it is. And at the same time, it's always been low priority, especially if there's been active kind of creative projects on the go. So when I kind of realized that I didn't at that point feel like making, that was a kind of an ideal way. And actually it ties in really well with what Liafa was saying, where it was kind of my way of digging through the box, because you got to kind of look through all your stuff and then work out what's still relevant, what you want to show, what you don't. So it was actually quite a good reflective process in that way. I've got a bit of a list here of things that you might want to consider doing if you've got a time and you're not creating. One thing you might want to do is redesign your workspace. So actually, and that you might actually trick yourself into making some creative work if you do that as well, because sometimes just turning up to your studio or your making space, even if that's a corner of your bedroom or whatever that is, sometimes just rethinking how that space works, and if it does it work, does it need a rethink of layout. So that could be a good thing to do. You might want to learn some new software, or brush up on the stuff that you're using. If you really want to nerd out, you might want to set up a new way of doing your accounting. We've got resources for pretty much all of this stuff as well. So if people who are listening and watching, if they want some tips and tricks on this kind of stuff, then get in touch or pop it in the question comments. So yeah, you might want to set up a mailing list. It can be a great way to kind of, if you do have a creative practice that has a professional side to it where you're selling things, that's a really great tool to have. You might want to make a business plan. Again, we've got stuff around that if people need some pointers on how to do that. You might want to write a bio. We did a previous one of these live streams with Liafa actually on how to write artist statements and artist bios, so you could look that up. And then another thought I had actually, which sort of steps a little bit even more outside of what we normally consider our creative practice, is you might want to think about your routines and how you do your day. Because I often think about creative practice as it's not in its own box as a kind of isolated part of our lives. It's kind of how we live our lives. So you might want to think about if you want to start an exercise routine, or if there's some sort of rituals that you want to start instigating, like going for a walk or whatever it is, or that leads you into that making space. So it could be a good chance just to play. But try and, if you are finding this time quite full on, then try and approach any of those things with quite low pressure. You don't have to set massive goals. You could just even start by having a bit of a look and seeing what some of these things might entail. Yeah, a few ideas.
Yeah, Liafa or Lauren, anything kind of else to add into that mix, or reflections of kind of where those things have worked for you?
I think when we had a talk about just in our team Zoom meeting, a few I don't know, they've all blurred into one, all of the Zooms, the mini Zooms and the chats that we've had, and how we talked about what we're doing to kind of get through, or how we deal with things when we are feeling a bit low or feeling a bit creatively uninspired. And we spoke about doing things in the most inefficient way possible. So when Paul's talking about routine, like, and because my practice is movement, I like to make sure that how I'm getting around the house or the space is the most inefficient way possible, going the long way, walking on my knees and hands, doing like a cartwheel halfway through, or anything that just kind of breaks up the monotony of your A to B in your day. I find that to be really fun. And it's nice because as humans, we strive to do things in the most like innovative and efficient way possible. And it's really nice to flip that on its head.
That's awesome. Kind of putting more play into every day and finding those kind of moments for a bit of silliness can be very refreshing.
Yeah.
Imagining you on all fours crawling around your house.
Yeah, I did a handstand against the back of the couch the other day and I ended up flipping over and I was like, oh, that's a new trick.
I'll do that again.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think we do talk about this, about trying to spark up when you're feeling a lot like, you know, a wet match. It is very tough, and I wouldn't like to diminish the fact that some people find it extremely hard. You know, if you suffer from anxiety or depression, or if you're going through some life, you know, crap, then how do we kind of spring clean that? I wouldn't like to give any glib answers, but one thing I would say is this, like you were saying about moving things around, I do that all the time. That is just me. It's like a hyperactive kind of thing within me. If I get bored with my space, I change it immediately, even if it's the middle of the night. In fact, sometimes I've done it in the middle of the night. I've changed the entire lounge around, and I wake up in the morning and the other half of me has changed it all the way back. So that is one thing. But one thing that might help is to put little creative cues for yourself around the place and fish out the crap or the stuff that's not really working out in your workspace. Like if you're a music maker, put something that will trigger you, think, oh man, I haven't looked at that for a long time, I'm going to play that. And so, you know, maybe not getting rid of stuff, maybe not spring cleaning, but reorganizing it and placing things in your life that will distract you. And distraction is a really helpful way to ease through downtimes. And so creative distractions, grab it from all the crap that you're chucking out and just repurpose it. I do that all the time, and I just leave, like making stuff. Just don't go putting it away straight away. If you're a neat freak, well, you know, you have to put it away. But if you're not, just leave it around so that you can come back and look at it.
Yeah, I often do that. I like to, when I leave my studio, I like to leave something that's not finished. So I'll often start something before I leave so that when I come back to the studio, it's kind of like it's a little invitation that's sitting there for me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Like the idea of reintroducing yourself to the objects that you have that sit around. And it's like sitting with them and being with them, or just reintroducing yourself to the spaces that you frequent in that way as well.
That's awesome. Well, just in kind of building upon that and thinking about the way that we are currently kind of having to engage with one another being primarily through some form of media, whether it's a Zoom or an email or a text or the various kind of forms of social media. It seems like this is also a time to kind of have a play in that space and think about how you engage and when you engage and what those types of processes would be. So Lauren, do you want to take us through a little bit of kind of ways to think about social media in this context?
Yeah, totally. Like Paul, I made a little bit of a list because I knew that I'd get distracted and go off on a rant or just get distracted by my background. So you can approach social media and spring clean it like you would, like we've spoken about, and spring cleaning your space. It's important to look at your goals. You can reevaluate your goals, look at your strategies. Maybe you don't have a strategy, and now's the perfect time to think about those things and put those together. You can do an audit on your platforms as well. So go through and check out the analytics, look at the posts that you've been putting up over the last year, and check out what's had higher engagements, what's had lower engagements, measure what's worked, or if everything's still in line with the goals that you have. You can also look online for more inspirational profiles too. So go through and find, like how I was talking before about going down new music rabbit holes to find inspiration. See on accounts that you like, look through their hashtags, see if it can lead you to a new source of inspiration or someone that you didn't realize was operating in a similar way to where you see yourself being, and then you can follow them and maybe engage with their content, have conversations online. You can also go through your feeds as well. And I know on Instagram, you can archive content. So anything that you feel is off-brand or doesn't, again, align with your goals, you can archive it instead of deleting it, because deleting can sometimes feel a little too permanent if it's something you've put up that you want to hold on to. And it's also a really good time to update all of your information as well, to look at it from your audience perspective. So what your landing page is all of your information up to date? Is it the correct name? When they land on your profile, is it obvious what you do from the first point of getting there? Can they contact you? Do all of your links work? It's all stuff like that. You can go through it with a fine-tooth comb. And I think because during these weird and unusual times, we're spending a lot of time on screens, that it's important to have the time you spend on screens as conscious use as well, and then knowing that you can turn it off too. So it's really nice to have a day where you silence the noise and put your phone down and don't engage with social media, because it might be the refresh that you need.
And so as part of kind of developing your social strategy, you could kind of come up with a kind of plan for days to engage and days not to engage, and kind of how to best kind of frame that from looking at the analytics and things as well. So
yeah, totally. If you're not getting post engagement on a Sunday, and then turn your phone off on a Sunday, have a break, go do your creative practice.
Definitely tautoko with that, and also that connects in with what Leafa was saying around the games on your phone and things like that. But also I think because there's such a temptation, I think, for a lot of us to just be doom scrolling these days. It's kind of fascinating what's happening in the world, but I really realized recently that there's this sort of fine line between being informed, which is good to know what's happening and have a clear idea about things, but then it's sort of going past that and becoming something else. And I think the same sort of thing with social media is there's a point at which it's sort of useful and inspiring and all those things, and then as you're saying, Lauren, it's like sometimes you just need to turn off, because it's it can just sort of suck you in, and it's I think for me it goes beyond the point of being useful, and then it's kind of making it harder for me to get on and do the other things in my life, like make work.
And also the types of content that you're searching for and that you're regularly engaging with, the algorithms are just going to keep showing you and suggesting similar content. So if you do find that you are doom scrolling, which I think is an excellent term, break it up, search something else, get keywords, type in new things, follow new hashtags, you know, like put in some positive words and see what pops up. And it could shake up your algorithms.
With that in mind, do you think it's obviously it's valuable to kind of engage with social media as being part of a community rather than just kind of yelling into the void? And so is there some real value in finding those other artists or hashtags or things that you that inspire you or bring joy, and actively engaging with them, sort of adding the more than the like, but the comment, and kind of being part of a discussion? Does that kind of work to kind of shift the way that works?
Yeah, that will affect your algorithms, and you'll start seeing more of what you're actively engaging with.
Yeah. Sometimes too, like you're saying, you know, doing those funny things like, you know, the funny walks or the, you know, doing things out of the ordinary. I think mentally that is a really good shifter for your brain. It's like a gear change. And sometimes my use of social media has been very, you know, patchy. I used to be just only clouds, and more clouds, which I love. But what I realized that when I'm feeling kind of like, especially during lockdown, I noticed that my desire to have fun had diminished quite a bit, including making. So something I did, which is very annoying to nearly everybody I know, but it doesn't matter. Provocation through silliness is also a really good distraction. So this is what I did. I got the annoying orange and those funny little kind of face things on Instagram, and I did a whole lot of those things. And man, my kids were like, "I'm disowning you," because you know I do. You know, they're so cute to me. They're so cute. And but they're also a little thing that made me smile. I don't really care if nobody liked it. They made me laugh. They made me sort of like, oh, look how cute that little oranges, and how you can. So I think that to me is a form of performance art, and that is another way of making. So if you can't make physically, you can. And I know a lot of people do creative um, Instagram posts, and especially artists like Sione Monu, whose whole practice is a lot of his practices lived out on social media, and some of the films that he's made for specifically for Instagram are sublime. So take some inspiration from people who make art from social media and make music, or even just surprise you with something that you didn't think they could do. Find those are gems.
Cool. I can also share something based on what Lauren was saying about, because it's quite hard just to put down the phone if you know that you need to.
What are you saying?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is we usually all, a lot of us are within reach of our phone at any moment, and if you're used to reaching for your phone all the time, and we've actually trained our brains to have that dopamine hit, it's very hard to suddenly shift away from that. So I can share what's worked for me recently, which is a sort of more of a stepped kind of shift away. So my first step, this wasn't at all planned, this is just how it's kind of worked out, but my first step was I deleted Facebook off my phone, because that was a thing that I really felt like I was getting nothing from, ironically, as we stream on Facebook. So
it'll take us down.
Yeah, that's right. That's gonna ruin our algorithm, eh?
Yeah.
Is it still called Facebook?
Who knows? Anyway, I deleted it off my phone, and that made a big difference, because it was no longer just there at my fingertips, right? Like I could still go on a computer, but who's doing that? And then after a while, I found that it kind of broke the spell, and I stopped kind of caring about it. So then I deactivated my Facebook. It can come back if I wanted to. It's sitting there. I just have to log in again, but at the moment it's deactivated. And then the next step that I've found is that, because I was reaching for my phone first thing in the morning, which is we're all doing it. Let's own up, a lot of us. But then I realized that that is the absolute gem time for my creative brain, and that kind of weird space in between waking up and then being fully like, alert and conscious. That is this precious time for my brain and my creativity, because I have some really wild and really useful ideas at that time. So I was like, not going to reach for the phone. I'm just going to sit here and at least take a few minutes just to dream up ideas and think creative thoughts. And now the next step that I've gone into is to leave the phone in the lounge room, so that it's not even like a temptation. So I don't know what the next step after that will be, and I'm not saying that that is the approach for everyone, but you could think about it as a step-by-step kind of moving towards maybe a more healthy balance. And I'm still on Instagram, and I still probably spend far too much time on, well, particularly Instagram, but I do feel more balanced by going through those steps.
I think it's also important to check in with yourself and see how the scrolling is making you feel, or when you are going on to those social platforms. Are you looking at posts and is it making you feel bad, or is it making you have imposter syndrome about your own practice, or is it inspiring you? Are you feeling happy when you're on there? And I think it's good, like if you are feeling terrible, like you can put it down, put the phone down. It's totally okay. You're not going to lose out on anything for putting the phone down. Just check in with yourself and your emotions and how it's making you feel.
Yeah, find those things that actually bring joy and focus on those, and the things that don't, you can kind of set them aside. That feels like a really beautiful place to finish up. It's been a really great discussion, and thank you all for being here and for sharing your thoughts and insights. We are going to look to do a few more of these live stream chats. They are really fun, and it's a great chance to kind of share some of the kōrero that we have in our own team meetings, and be part of the discussion and sharing with the community that we're a part of. So thanks everyone who watched, and if you have any questions that come up watching this later on, or as it kind of mulls about in your mind, do feel free to reach out either through our social media channels or through our website, and hello@creativewaikato.co.nz. And if you need any of the resources, or just want to have a chat with one of the team about anything that you're going through in your creative practice, you're welcome to do that. So once again, thank you to Leafa, Paul and Lauren. And have an excellent rest of your Friday and super creative weekend. Oh, and thank you to Leafa's dog. I don't know what his name is.
No name.
No name. But yeah, awesome. Have a great day, everyone.